You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
All right, welcome back. Another episode of 91 Reasons. A shorter episode, so I can get a bonus episode up in just a few days after the other episode. And I'll do these when the what I'm going to talk about, when the topic is not worthy of a giant mega show and is more just a short story. You know, let's sit around the internet fireside and we'll talk about different adventures we've gone on. Now, when I was younger, my mother and I used to go to the swap meet all the time. There was a swap meet out in La Mirada, which inexplicably became the Santa Fe Springs swap meet. It was a drive-in theater that never moved, but somehow ended up one city over. I have no idea how that worked. But we used to go there all the time, and I used to love looking for, at the time, just barely used Star Wars figures and stuff to add to my collection. Or if you hit the jackpot, and the jackpot was somebody's Star Wars collection for $10 or $15, my mother would always buy that for me. So that's how I augmented a lot of my Star Wars collection, was through the swap meet. And when I started going to the La Mirada swap meet, it was mostly used stuff with a little bit of new stuff. And then as the 80s progressed, it became more and more just sunglasses and underwear and socks and T-shirts and nothing, not worth going, because I don't need that kind of imported junk. I'm always out looking for, the good stuff, the old stuff. And I can remember that the La Mirada swap meet, and this must be 83, 84. Two things stand out in my mind. The first is they used to have mini sideshows, some sort of sideshow attraction, and I always paid for that. One time it was the world's smallest horse. It was a little miniature horse. But a better time was they had the world's largest rats. And the cool thing about it was on a raised platform. So it went like 5 steps up, and then they had the rats in a cage that you looked down into, and then 5 steps down. So you could actually see the people looking into the cage and oohing and awing. And you know what? That got my 25 cents. Now, I don't know what was in that cage for real. I assume they were possums or something. But I'll never forget that day of seeing the world's largest rats out at the La Mirada swap meet. And the other thing they had, which was interesting as a kid, just because, when you're a kid, you're in that small circle of friends that your mom has in church and school and that sort of thing. So when you see somebody that's unusual outside of your circle, it stands out in your mind. And what was unusual is there was a guy at the La Mirada swap meet, early 80s, who had one of those devices you hold up to your neck because you can't speak, and it has to stimulate your vocal cords. And that guy was all, I don't know what he was selling. I'm if I remember it correctly, it was military surplus, which I didn't really have a use for. But I was going to ask him how much the things were, because when you're like, excuse me, how much is this? He would go, well, that costs about $2. Oh my God. It was the coolest thing ever. This guy's like a robot. He can do the greatest robot voice of all time. I didn't know then what the problem was or how or why he had that device, but I can remember just every week seeking him out so I could ask him questions. Well, let me tell you, kid, those knives are from WW2. I was transfixed. And as you can imagine, I go to the swap meet in my adult life. I've never really stopped going, and I go usually once a week. Oddly enough, on Tuesday mornings. There's one out here in Riverside on Tuesday that I go to. The weekend ones are usually just filled with, new, like I said, new imported stuff. But the weekday swap meets out here in Riverside, which I'm really thankful that they have, because they don't have them anywhere else locally. It's mostly used stuff. And what's weird is that the used stuff that I collect, nobody else collects. So I'm kind of a lone wolf out here, and I don't have to get up at the crack of dawn, because I used to go to Cypress Swap Meet on the weekends, which is connected to Cypress College. And you had to get up at the crack of dawn and get there, or all the good stuff was gone. And I've learned at this one by my house now, it doesn't really matter what time you go. The people there are not looking for the same things that I'm looking for. And what I look for are vintage toys, vintage movie promotional items, anything like that. And I've gotten really lucky over the years. I'm not sure what it is, but I sort of have this divining rod. You know what a divining rod is? It's that stick in the shape of a Y that you hold out and you're able to find water with it if you believe in that sort of thing. I have a divining rod for cool stuff. And whatever it is, like I can just, like the Terminator, give me that. I can find it. And I've got a million stories of some of the most amazing and craziest things I found at the swap meet. So I'm going to tell you this week about when we first moved to Riverside and we first started going to this Tuesday swap meet. It was pretty bare bones. There was not a lot of dealers out there. And the people that were out there were just selling stuff they'd gotten out of storage units after people lose their storage units. You ever seen Storage Wars? I'm not the guy that buys the storage unit. I'm the next guy down the line. I'm the guy at the swap meet who's buying from the guy who bought from the storage unit, if that makes sense. So I don't have to buy boxes of crud to get to the good stuff. I just buy the good stuff. And you know what? I don't mind paying a premium for that, because then I don't have to deal with all the other stuff. If you watch that silly Storage Wars show, they're always talking about how much it's going to make, how much money all this stuff is worth, and they spent $700 on a storage unit, but they're going to make $1,000. Well, I don't know about you, but if you read between the lines, to make that $300 in profit is going to take them months of work. And it doesn't sound like much of a profit if you're paying yourself, quote unquote, by the hour. So I just buy the good stuff. And one day we went to the swap meet, and I found a wind-up, not a wind-up, but a battery-operated robot. And it was a pretty tall robot, not Shogun Warrior size, but maybe 10 or 11, 12 inches. It was a really nice robot. And I'll see if I can dig up a picture of it, because I like to take pictures of this stuff before I sell it. And I didn't know if it was a reproduction or an original, but the guy only wanted $3 for it. And $3 is worth a gamble any way you slice it, because even if it's not valuable, $3 for a big robot is a good deal, because I'll just keep it. The problem is that, unlike, Star Wars figures or Transformers, vintage robots are not stamped with anything except usually made in Japan. So it took a good week or 2 weeks to track down what I thought this was and what series of robots that I thought it was. And the thing that gave it away was it had a chest, I think, that opened up. And then the cool thing is it had this metal, almost weather vane looking piece that you could stick in its head. And by sticking in its head or removing it from its head, you made it either start or stop. So by using that and going on a lot of robot collector forums, I was able to find out that it was part of this series of either Saturn or Jupiter era robots, blah, blah, blah. And I was able to get a name for it. So I put the thing on eBay, and I think I put a starting bid of like $20 or $30, because, I paid $3. So anything above $3 is a win, and you want it to go as high as you can. And the best way to do that is to start low so that people think they're going to get it. And before long, they're bidding, $50, $60, $70, $80. Now, this robot, it got a bid pretty quickly. I can remember that within the first couple of days, it was at $70 or $80. So I was already excited, because that's a complete win as far as the swap meet goes. But the real action when it comes to items like this, and you're always going to get, if it's a really cool item, and by it going to 70 or 80, confirmed that it was a vintage 50s, early 60s robot. If it's a real item like that, people start coming out of the woodwork and trying to buy it now. Just give me a price, close the auction, and I'll buy it from you right now. And they're hoping to get it, at a bargain. But if you're savvy, It's better to be patient because you never know what it's going to go for. You never know who's going to bid this thing up. And so as it came down to the last day, there were two people who emerged that were bidding for it. And I think by the end, it had hit 150, 175. And there were two people bidding, like I said. One was a woman in Pennsylvania. And I know this because when an item hits that kind of money, I am constantly checking up on who's actually doing the bidding, because if they've got a lot of negatives or they don't have any ratings, odds are you're probably not going to get paid. So it doesn't matter what it sells for, because what you're going to end up doing is starting the whole auction over again from scratch to start again, because the winning bidder has no intention of paying. And that's quite common. That does happen a lot. So I checked up on this woman in Pennsylvania, and it turns out she was in a wheelchair, and she had bid on a lot. She had bought a lot of items off eBay, so she was a prolific eBay shopper, which to me is fantastic. That's the green light. So her bid was fine, and the other bidder was a guy in New Zealand, and his was not as good a rating, but it was okay because he was the second bidder and she was actually in the lead. So as long as she stayed in the lead, it wasn't going to be a problem. So I let this auction sit all day, and the real action is in the last hour. And in some auctions, like one I had just the other day, it was in the last 2 seconds. So I let it sit, let it marinate, and these guys kept pinging it and kept bidding it up by $5 here, $10 here, $5 here. And it was the same two people out of New Zealand and Pennsylvania. And then a third guy came in and he started bidding it up. So by the time it got down to the last couple of hours, it had hit, I think, $400, which for my $3 investment was a huge, massive win. That's all you can hope for, right? So the guy in New Zealand started writing me questions about the robot, but they were just weird questions, and I think he was just making sure I was legit in the same way that I was working on making sure he was legit. But the difference is that he was doing it using movie quotes from the Peter Sellers movie Being There. Well, I love that movie, so I was able to just quote it right back to him with the next consecutive line, and it was a real weird trip, So it was fascinating. And then I actually heard from the woman in New Zealand. No, sorry, he was in New Zealand, she was in Pennsylvania. So I heard from the woman in Pennsylvania, and she was excited because she was she was winning, but this guy kept edging her bid up, or sometimes overtaking her, and then she would overbid right away to get back on it. And she had told me that her husband collects robots. So she wasn't buying it for herself. She was buying it for a gift. To which I joked, I wish my wife would buy me a $500 gift. So this is, quite the wife buying this robot for this guy. But the guy in New Zealand is right on her heels. He's dogging her every bid as the auction started to wind down. And he got more anxious and started writing me even more. So it's weird. Like normally, bidders are very quiet, and all they do is bid. So you don't know what they're thinking or what they're into. What's going on. But this was a different auction. For some reason, this robot really struck a chord with the two people that were the high bidders, and I was okay with that because, A, it was going to make me more money, and B, it was going to go to a good home. And when you buy an item this rare and this cool, when you finally get past the money part of it, what you want after that is you want the item to go to a good home, to a good collector, someone who's going to really take care of it. So this didn't bother me at all, and I really enjoyed talking to both these people. And it was weird being the guy in Riverside in between two people from around the world, the New Zealand guy and the woman from Pennsylvania, both bidding on this crazy $3 robot, which was funny because when I got to the swap meet, my daughter was still in a stroller. So we put it in a plastic bag and we hung it on the side of the stroller. And as my wife is pushing it, the stroller down the aisle, the robot's going clang, clang, clang. And I just remember looking over and said, I don't know if the robot's valuable, but either way, maybe we shouldn't be clanging. I said, I'll just carry it. Or I'll walk it back to the car. So I made sure it didn't clang, clang against the stroller anymore. The last thing you want to do is find out that it's, worth a gazillion dollars and you've banged it up and lost all of its value. But anyways, so as the auction winds down, these two guys, the New Zealand guy and the woman from Pennsylvania, are bidding the heck out of this thing. It's fast and furious. It's $500, $510, $520, $530. It's almost like watching and being at a real live auction, the way the bids are coming in fast and furious. And it was really cool. I've had auctions like that before, and when we do other episodes, these little mini episodes, I'll tell you about some of the other crazy items. But this robot was the first one out in Riverside, and what followed at the end of the auction was what made it so memorable. Not the least of which, when the dust finally settled, the robot sold for about $750, which, again, for my $3 investment is insane. I was so excited that I had found this robot in a pile of toys, rescued it, and was going to find it a home, and somebody who was really going to treasure it. And when the dust settled, it was the woman in Pennsylvania that had won. And she paid almost immediately. So I was able to get that robot, very gingerly and very carefully boxed up and ready to go out to Pennsylvania. But the kicker, now the guy in New Zealand was writing me, he was ticked off because he thought he had it in the bag. He was willing to spend big bucks, right? And I think between the two of them, realistically, they had driven the auction up at least $250 or $300 just between the two of them. So when the woman finally wrote me to tell me how excited she was that she had bought this robot and that she was going to pay, which is even better news, she went on to tell me that it was, like I said, a gift for her husband. And she was excited because her husband was away on a trip. And he was going to get this robot as sort of a coming home present. And where was he on a trip? He was on a trip to New Zealand. Yes, that's right. They were bidding against each other to buy the robot. He wanted it for himself. She wanted to buy it for him. And I just had that's such a surreal thing to have two people opposite sides of the globe with me in the middle bidding on the same item that they want. He must have really wanted this robot. And I bet, now I didn't say anything because it's not my place, but I bet when he got home from his trip and saw that robot, his head must have exploded from like a rainbow coming out. Like, this is the very robot I was bidding on. Is that not like Gift of the Magi for real? How cool is that? So that was a really cool moment. And I made a lot of money, and they were very happy with their purchase, and everybody won. So that was a very cool eBay story that I had. And I was really, really excited to put that out in the mail, make sure they got it safely. But hey, like I said, you never know what you're going to find at the swap meet. I'm always out looking. And in future installments of this, I'll talk about the amazing theme park history box that I found that took me, I'm not kidding, 5 weeks to get. Or the time I found the entire contents of Dustin Diamond, Screech on Saved by the Bell. All his storage unit was at the swap meet. All his personal items. That's pretty crazy. Or the fact that 2 weeks ago, I ran across a set of very, very rare Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein statues. So there is crazy stuff out there, and I'm always coming across it. You never know what's going to turn up at the swap meet. And some of the stuff I have found has blown me away. And I'm just so, like, you can't keep it all, obviously. I have to keep the momentum going. I sell the stuff to make a profit, to pay a bill, and then to buy more stuff. So it's it's the circle of life. It's the circle of junk, and you know what I'm saying? So I found all this crazy stuff. So like I said, this mini episode, I'll talk about an item that I found, and I'll keep posting these as time warrants. And hope you like them. If not, I'm sorry to have wasted your time. I just wanted to do something a little different. Yesterday I did nearly an hour and a half on The Matrix, and my daughter, who listens to the show while she's playing Little Big Planet, came over and said, "That episode was so boring. I hated it." She likes when I talk about my personal life. So I have really deep ones I want to get into, but I'm exhausted. I'm still recovering from Haunt. So this is just like a little sampler piece until you get, this is the sample until you buy the whole item. You know what I mean? This is the guy at the grocery store grilling up little tiny bits of bacon in hopes that you'll purchase the entire package. Except there's no purchasing here because it's just a download for free. So thanks for listening. If you love the show, which I hope you do if you're listening, the best way to support the show is to leave us a review on iTunes or tell your friends about it. Share the links. Share the Facebook page. Check out my 6th Key books on Amazon.com. And, hey, I go to the swap meet every week, so next week I could try one of these, and it could be something I found earlier, like I mentioned, or it could be a brand new item that I just found and sold for a bundle, because I'm always doing that. It's very strange. Cool stuff. You know what I found just the other day that I kept was a vintage flash gun. You know when they have the cameras in like the 1940s movies, they're like, a picture for the press, and there's that big stick on the side with the canopy up top that holds the flash. Well, that's what they made lightsabers out of for Star Wars. So I found a vintage one that is not quite Luke Skywalker's saber, but it's very close to Darth or Obi-Wan's saber, and I got it for $2, and that I'm going to keep because I just think that's too cool. To find one of those in the wild just is really cool. So if you want pictures of this stuff, let me know. I'll see what I can do. I got to dig them up out of the files. I spent the last day and a half trying to digitize and upload all the videos from Spencer Gifts, including footage of Don Junkman Jakob Donberg on the video. So if you want to see what Donberg looks like, you can check out the video. And what's weird in the video is that he's not being mean. And why is he not being mean to me? Because he wants stuff. He's getting all the stuff from Spencer Gifts that they're throwing out. So he's such a nice guy. Who only knew if I'd only had junk to give the guy day in and day out, he would have been nice to me. But I didn't have that, so I got the other Donberg. All right, this is Jeff Tucker, and more importantly, this is 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?